Good morning and welcome to Talking Baseball Australia Live. My name is Dan Vaughan. My broadcast partner, Paul Morgan, will be joining in a moment. Another great show on tap this morning. Let's roll the open in 3, 2, 1. Here we go.
It's Talking Baseball Australia. It's baseball updates you'll really love. The MLB and ABL news you want. With Paul Morgan and Dan Vaughan. It's baseball's best mate all year round. From the batter's box to the mound.
Well, the video froze up on us. That happens sometimes. We'll just part of what we do here on live Facebook Live. I mentioned Paul Morgan will be joining me right now. 3, 2, 1 for him. I'm going to bring him in. Is Paul joining us in the lovely, beautiful West this morning? And I'm sure he's got his morning coffee ready to go. I know you got that coffee ready to go. Got the got your flat white. What you got today? A little long Mac? What do you got?
No, just the old H2O today, DV.
Oh, okay,
water,
it's that early.
It is very early here. So I took the dog for a walk earlier. So spring is definitely in the air, though, DV. You got the flowers out. You got the weather coming in. You know, you can just sort of almost smell baseball time in Australia. Well, hopefully baseball time in Australia will be in many capacities, and hopefully sort of doing it as we like to do it and have done for many years now.
Talking Baseball Australia Live, we're glad you're along here. Questions, comments later in the show as well, so fire those off, and we'll get to those in the back end. Let me give you a quick overview of what's going on in this one. I've mentioned, but I'm going to mention now, Tyler Anderson, a former Heat pitcher, but also current Heat pitching coach, also a member of the under-18 national team coaching staff with Andy Kyle, of course, the skipper of the Heat. He'll be joining us on the back end. A great conversation. Looking forward to having him on. I have a theory, and in part, you know my theory. My theory is cricketers and footy players make daggum good pitchers. Any thought of the open on that?
Well, yeah, and I think it's just purely like I think if you can get the mechanics from different sports going, and I think you're spot on with your theory. And what's interesting, even to kind of parlay separately, I remember a conversation I was having recently with Don Knapp, who's one of the original pioneers who came out to Western Australia from the US, and the Cricket Association, brought Don along in the 70s and 80s to teach them how to field. So I think, I think there's a real, I agree with what your sentiment is around footy players and cricketers becoming really good pitchers. And I just think generally in sports, maybe sports have an opportunity, perhaps don't do a good enough job kind of cross-pollinating and figuring out how we can become ultimate athletes based on other sports.
Well, Tyler will be joining us in the back end. Questions for you fans. Okay, here's the question. After last week's fixture announcement, we had Cam Vale on, CEO of Baseball Australia. I want to know from you, I know Paul wants to know, what do you guys think? Will we play baseball in the ABL in 2021? You heard our opinion last week, but I want to hear from you all. What do you guys think? Will we play baseball? I'm not saying it's going to be this schedule, but will we play this coming season? I want to hear that from you guys. We're also going to dive into other news and notes, but I think the biggest thing we for all of us is the exposure, and not just in Australia, but in North America as well. And I'm calling it the Manny Impact partner. What a big impact it was. I'm going to put this on the screen because I'm very proud of this little video. I'm a little ditty here I've done. This is the Manny Impact intro video. Here we go. Manny Impact in 3, 2, 1. Here we go. There you go. Manny Impact right there, mate. That's my thing here. Manny Ramirez announced, we talked a little bit about this a couple weeks ago. We were mentioning that we thought that he would be heading over to Auckland, and that was sort of the thinking. But you and I had it on pretty good authority that this thing wasn't done yet, that there was still some possibility. We'd heard rumors that he would wind up maybe somewhere else in the ABL. Dang it, if those rumors weren't correct, he winds up in Sydney. This is a case of, I don't know, if Manny Ramirez hits one home run, plays one game or no games, this is huge publicity, huge impact. I mean, the ABL has got to be as happy as punch right now, knowing that Manny Ramirez is getting the ABL coverage worldwide.
Yeah, it's huge, isn't it, DV? And it's we saw yesterday on social media. Oh, well, the Blue Sox released his jersey yesterday as well. Don't know how the sales have gone for that. If anyone from Blue Sox Nation's tuning in, let us know how the sales of Manny Ramirez's jersey is going at the moment. But it's huge, and you see the impact. You see John Morosi was on Twitter about it, major MLB insider. Getting that exposure about Australia. And look, I think if anything, what Manny Ramirez can do, as you see those jerseys on there right now, DB, if he can
Dang, I'm good.
if I know you should have a TV career in television, but
Gosh.
if I think worst case, as you said, DV, worst case scenario, he has one at bat, even has no at bats, maybe he just suits up for the Blue Sox. At worst case scenario, it really puts on the radar again and reaffirms, oh, there's a league down there. Oh, well, that league's pretty cool. If Manny Ramirez is going to go play in that league, maybe I'll go play that. Or maybe, maybe I'll pay more attention to that league. If he can play, best case scenario, and, you start to get that broadcast working into the US, that's a huge tick for me. I think that is absolutely 100. We know that the model works for Geelong Korea with their broadcast going back into Korea. We know that they've had like millions upon millions of people tune in into that broadcast. So, look, I think Manny Ramirez is an unreal tick for the league and to kind of, to bridge that gap stronger in North America.
And I think, too, this is one of those things that has potential if the right things break. Obviously, the season being played is first. But let's just say he goes, he doesn't have to be MVP of the league, but let's say he has a good year. Of course, he's advanced, 49. He's up to be others. And I talk about this all the time. These guys talk. I mean, for example, right now in the clubhouse in St. Paul, Nate Sampson, who played there in Melbourne this year, won a Claxton Shield, is telling guys, hey, you'll play winter ball in Australia. I know that for a fact. These guys talk, and Manny's got mates around the big. There's got to be a guy out there, maybe not as big of a name, but you're going to see more consistent names. I think the storyline here is potential for this thing continue, not just get Manny's of the world, but just a consistent quality of ball player. And who knows, you might even find yourself a bigger name down the road. The ending is the possible ending of this thing is a real plus from the standpoint of even if he just goes out and hits 250.
Yeah, I think spot on, and it'll be interesting to see whether you start to pick up. I think whether you pick up players that may have been released, not signed, that still have potential to play MLB. Maybe they start coming down here. I know Rob Hobb, a good mate of the show as well. He was tweeting Hunter Pence over the weekend, trying to get Hunter Pence, who was released from the San Francisco Giants, to come down and play in Australia as well. And look, the opportunities eventually are for those players, and I think that's huge. But yeah, that word impact, DV, that's the Manny Impact.
It's the Manny Impact. And this league, and this is a thing too. Let's take fans back to 2000. Let's just go back to 2011, 10-11, the 10-11 season. That's year 2 of the league. I don't think anybody thought, granted, this is back when Major League Baseball was a part of the Australian Baseball League. They were basically funding the whole thing. I mean, 90% of it, whatever it was, 80%. There was no thought of a Manny Ramirez coming over. It was for prospects. But now you fast forward all these years later, to see this league grow from the prospect league to now established guys who want to come over and play winter ball, that's also a story of the growth of the league. I think that's an underlining story that maybe we haven't thought about, but this league's gone from the little prospect league and for Australian players to being for Australian players and for guys who are established big leaguers. Even you're going to see more and more of this. The story has changed in the ABL.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree with you. And it'll be so interesting to see 5 years time down the line, DV, like where is it at? And we know that minor league baseball isn't going to be as a bigger pool as what it was. Like, how does the ABL sort of maybe play a role there? And look, I think it'd be so great to have some swan songs of players come out to Australia as well, and like really, build that MLB academy stronger in Australia, build that pipeline, and it's probably a great segue into what was a really great story this week down for young Solomon Maguire over in Sydney as well, who signed a deal with the Pittsburgh Pirates around $1 million Australian. It was around $1 million Australian. It was exactly for the Pirates, just under $600,000 US and $175,000 education bonus or education fund, which is quite interesting, Dan, because I sort of off the air, I sort of said, what typically talk to me a little bit about that. So Solomon Maguire, huge congratulations to him, young high school. I think he's wearing a $50,000 Rolex watch at the moment, but he signed for a bucket-load of cash to go to the Pirates, part of Team Australia and obviously the Sydney Pipelines. But just tell us, Dan, you were saying before that that education fund's something new in baseball. Well, not
Yeah,
new, but still.
It's something that it's not uncommon. This is not an uncommon thing. As a matter of fact, I've used this story several times on our broadcast over there. Clayton Kershaw, the Dodgers, left-handed legend, was in a similar situation when he was a first-round draft pick. He was going to go to Texas Christian University, TCU, which is where Paul Gonzalez of Brisbane fame and former member of Team Australia and big part of baseball Queensland. That's where Paul played his college ball at Texas Christian, the Horned Frogs they are. But he was going to go and get guaranteed education, and there goes the dog. And the Dodgers said, well, look, what's it going to take? And oftentimes you see these guys, this is not uncommon, guys all the time who get drafted either come out early or who come out of high school before they go to college. They're guaranteed some kind of financial parachute, if you want to call it. Either their education's paid for, if they said they blow their arm out, tear their knee up, their career is over. They've got something to fall back on to get that education. Kershaw had it written to his contract. Of course, he turns out he didn't need it. I've got a cousin-in-law, Logan Shore, out of the University of Florida. He's playing right now AAA with the Tigers, and former athletics farmhand. When he was drafted as a junior, the athletics also guaranteed they would help pay for his last part of college should he, something else happen. That's not uncommon. It's very common, especially common for young men like that. And that's a great thing. And it's good to see, because we're going to talk about this with Tyler Anderson about the college route versus the pro route. But now this young man's got some money in the bank to not only, perhaps pursue a baseball career, he's got money in the bank to also pursue an education, which he might not have had that chance before. He's parlayed two things in two pathways, and good on him, man. That's a great story for Solomon Maguire.
Yeah, absolutely. Congratulations again, Solomon Maguire. Big week for ABL, big week for Australian baseball, big week for our old mate Mike Brasso too.
Yeah, Mike Brasso had a pretty good week, mate. He had a pretty good couple of nights. And let's start with last night here in the States. He went deep twice, and I'm going to roll the video for you. He went deep twice last night. Give you guys a full screenshot of that real quickly. There he goes. He's right there in Yankee Stadium last night. See you later. Not a bad shot right there. He also comes back with another one a few minutes later. And it's cool to see him. A lot of the video's freezing up on us. Say, well, a technical problem. We'll just keep fighting. There he goes. You see Mike around the bases there. I want you guys to watch what they're doing here. Do you guys see this? I'm pausing here. Back into I want you guys to see this little handoff they're doing. I just think it's kind of cool. Bring this down for you guys to let you guys see this. But watch this little handoff they're doing around third. I'm not really sure if they're passing here. They get something. I don't know what that is, though. But it's kind of a little something different. I've seen teams take handoffs, do the lazy man high five, they do elbows, but whatever the case may be. But he went deep twice against the Yankees last night. That's a pretty big part of it. That's the first part of the story. Story number one is he went deep last night twice at Yankee Stadium in a budding rivalry, but that's not the entire story. First off, it's kind of cool when you see a guy like Mike Brasso doing what he's doing. Just seems like yesterday he was in that Heat kit. But going deep twice, those Rays still in first place. But that's not the entire part of the story, is it, partner?
No, it's not. Poor old Mike nearly had his head taken off by. Mike had his Aroldis Chapman was.
Oh, there you go.
Was the man, of course, to throw 101 miles an hour, the Yankee closer threw it right at Brasso's head. And, I know Chapman's, I think he got a 3 or 5 game suspension. I can't remember off the top of my head. But, boy, I mean, that is just stupid stuff from Chapman, isn't it? That 101 miles an hour at your head is just, that's a recipe for disaster if that hits.
Yeah, there's no love lost to those two teams either. And I'm going to show you that video in just a second here. But uh, what I love about it is that, 2 nights ago I saw this highlight on ESPN. I saw that's part of it too. I watched both replays of the Yes Network and the Tampa Network, or Fox Sports Florida. Each one had their own perspective on it. They each had a different way they were looking at it. They're rivals. They're big rivals. And I love the fact that Brosseau comes back out. I keep saying Brosseau. Mike Brosseau comes out and does what he does the next night. All he does is, okay, you throw at my head, and all I'm going to do is come back the next night and hit 2 long balls. Here's what he did in the opener of the series right here. This is what we're talking about here. Here's the audio. There's the video. I'm going to show the video for you. Here's the video from 2 nights ago.
Oh, over his head.
Show it to you again here.
Oh, look out there. 101 up around the head.
Kind of dragging there, but I swear he gets look at that. Look, 101 miles an hour right there as it freezes on the frame there for you. 101 on the gun there. And yeah, that's yikes. That's what happened 2 nights ago. So all he does is go out and hit 2 home runs. I love to see that. I love to see that. I'm not a big Yankees fan. I know you're not a big Yankees fan, but if you're going to retaliate, and of course, what happened in that ball game, what I probably should have played for it, they actually benches cleared. What he struck out in the game, they struck out. Chapman gave him the stare, that long stare down, and Brosseau was heading back to the dugout, and suddenly a little chirping going on, and both benches cleared. You see that part of it, but again, what's the best way to answer it? Go out and kick their tail the next night, hit 2 bombs.
100%. I mean, it was phenomenal stuff from Brosseau, and and the other thing that's really you would have seen in the original sort of frame. I mean, he's hitting 320 odd now as well at the big league level, which is huge, and that's how we remember Brosseau. Of course, was undoubtedly until he broke his hand. Of course, as your famous call, the MVP of the league from Adelaide, who broke Brosseau's hand, was just such an incredible player at the ABL level. No surprise to us that he's gone to doing what he's doing, and that team now. I mean, they've got Choi and Brosseau and Kevin Kiermaier. They got a nice little ABL alumni team going there in Tampa Bay. They're running away with that American League East as well. Tampa Bay at the same time. I mean, heck, even the Blue Jays are 1 game behind the Yankees. They might take them down too. So it's just real interesting what's happening in the world of Major League Baseball at the moment. But those Rays,
it's a weird season too.
Yeah, it's weird, and
they do. And I listened back to the call that. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to talk over you there. I listened back to the call of that, and it's funny because the Yankees broadcasters, when Chapman throws 101 up in his head, are kind of like, meh, that's close, but he got out of the way. The poor guys in Tampa, the little engine that could, they're down there going, what's up with that? I mean, you can't do that. That's classless. It was funny how the perception of the two and you and I have been there before as broadcasters. Yeah. We know that the perception is different, and those Rays broadcasters weren't happy. The Yankees guys were, it's all good.
It's all good, but no, I think we had a Bartoli from Adelaide that comes to mind from 2 different sets. But I know you're fighting off some internet gremlins there, DV. So we'll we're internet gremlins. But hey, let's jump into Tyler Anderson. How about that? That's probably a good segue, isn't it? Don't you think? I think
let's do that. Tyler joining us here on the show. Let's roll to Tyler Anderson, Perth Heat pitching coach and former Heater, here on Talking Baseball Australia Live. Well, Talking Baseball Australia continues. Baseball's best mate, and a guy we've talked about this gentleman not only in our broadcast the last couple of years, but also the last couple of weeks, kind of talking him up. Looking forward to having him on the show. And former Heater and also Heat coach, pitching guru, and member of the Angels organization as well as a coach, Tyler Anderson. Tyler, good to see you, bud. How you doing today, mate?
Good. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. Always a pleasure. I got so much I want to dive into with you. And first off, I believe, and this is something Paul Morgan and I've talked about, the Iceman Simon Isons and I have talked about this. The chance to go to college from Australia to the States, as opposed to signing professionally. There's no right or wrong necessarily, but I think you're a real good example. You're a young man who had great success as a young man coming through the system, and then signed to play junior college ball in the States, parlayed that to an NAI experience, and you were able to get a degree out of it. Talk about that decision. What went into that decision for you to make that jump and as a young man?
Yeah, I think it's always a tough one for the Australian kids. I think there is no right or wrong, like you said. I think it's very individualized. If you're a can't miss prospect and somebody's going to give you $500,000, then yeah, I think it makes sense to probably go to pro ball. But if you're one of those $10,000, $15,000 guys that they're just taking a chance on, it's really hard to make it from that point. It's really hard to make it no matter what. So for me, I didn't really have a chance to go sign at a young age, and I wanted to continue playing, and the college route always made a ton of sense for me. I had a coach, Stuart Scott, a local guy in Perth, that hooked me up with a school in Arizona, and I went there for a year and had some success my freshman year. Ended up transferring to Iowa because of Rob Sorensen and Aaron Bonomi and some of the other guys that came before me, and had a good season there, and then went on to an NAIA school just because of grades and credits and that kind of stuff. So I think a lot of kids get caught up in the D1 kind of hype, and we've seen some guys like one guy that went to Mizzou, SEC, like
Right.
that route is obviously great if you can do it, but not a lot of kids get that opportunity. And it's actually cool to see some Australian kids start to play in some big conferences and some big schools. And it's kind of grown from, I was probably one of the first kind of guys to go to college in my age group, and now it seems like everybody's going, which is really cool to see.
Yeah, that Robbie Glendenning, of course, the young man he was talking about right there, Missouri Tiger. Yeah, interesting. This is a little sidebar. I was a general manager, play-by-play voice of the Burlington Bees back in the late '90s. I've always asked this question. I've always wanted to ask this question because I've been to Southeast Iowa and I love Iowa. The people couldn't have been any nicer. But
Yeah.
did you kind of shake your head, young man from Australia? I mean, you're of course you were in Arizona for a year, but young man from Australia, all of a sudden you're in Southeast Iowa, going, where am I? What was the reaction, the culture shock for Southeast Iowa for a young man from Perth?
Yeah, so I had spent my first year in Arizona, and obviously Glendale is like right in Phoenix. It's a suburb of Phoenix, so you're in a big city, and it's 100 degrees every day, and the weather is great, and everything's great. And then I transferred to Iowa, but I actually didn't go in the fall. I took online classes in the fall, and I showed up in the spring. Well, I actually showed up at Christmas time, ready for the spring, and there was about 8 feet of snow. Rob picked me up at the airport in St. Louis, and we drove through snowstorm to Iowa, and I think that was the first time I'd seen snow. So yeah, it was a little different, a small town, Burlington, Iowa, but I probably had as much fun as I did anywhere else. So I was excited to go back this year to Burlington, but that didn't work out with everything that's going on with the pandemic and stuff like that. And now I don't think they're going to be a team next year, so it kind of sucks. I'll never get that chance, but yeah, I love my time in Iowa for sure.
Yeah, I'm like you. I'm a Texas boy, and I agree we get cold weather. We get seasons in Texas, but my poor dog at the time, I always tell this story. I've told this in the air a couple of times with Paul too, that my poor dog and I drove up from St. Louis, flew in and drove up, and the snow just kept getting taller on the side of the road as I got north. And my poor dog, when I let her out at the rest stop, she's like, we're going south, man. We're going back. She did not want to get out of the car. She'd never seen snow like that. So I've been there. I took Claxton Shields for you. You spent 2 years in the Heat family. It is a family. That's one thing I've noticed, and I saw it my first year. I missed you by 1 year. My first year was 2012, and been with the club in the organization ever since. But it's a family, and I get the feeling from you, watching you on social media, seeing you go about your business with the Heat. It's a family. Tell us about that. Tell the Australian family of baseball fans out there, what makes the Heat family so unique?
Yeah, it is. Like, it's a really unique culture. Just when I came in, it was obviously with Luke Hughes and Tim Kennelly and some of the older guys. and they kind of set the tone. I don't know if they directly were trying to set the culture. They're just two competitive guys that kind of made everyone around them better. And then we had Hendricks and we had some good guys. And I think that's been passed down to guys. And now you see Alex Hall and Jesse Williams, and those guys have kind of carried it on. And I think what's made the Heat successful for a long time now is that we have the best core group of Australian players.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I'm sorry about that. I didn't interrupt you. Go ahead.
Yeah, we're able to bring in imports and we can add anybody, and they kind of just fit into the culture because that Australian culture is so strong. And I think you're starting to see it a little bit with Adelaide this year. They developed a really young core group of Australian players, and I think you have to have that to be successful in the ABL.
No doubt about it. The voice you're hearing there, former Heater, current Heat coach, and I want to ask you about the Angels situation. But Tyler Anderson, you're kind of like all of us. We're all in this COVID holding spot.
Yeah.
Walk us through that experience of getting the phone call with the Angels organization saying, "Hey, we want you to come work for us and be a coach." How did that transpire?
Yeah, so I had been coaching in college. I spent 2 years at Dartmouth in the Ivy League in New Hampshire on the East Coast. My wife was pregnant, so we were trying to move back to the Midwest, and I got a job at St. Louis University, right in St. Louis. So we moved to St. Louis. I was there for a year, and then I got a job as the recruiting coordinator and pitching coach at Lindenwood, which is a kind of a powerhouse Division II school in Missouri, right there in St. Louis. So I was there for about a semester, and I actually got a Twitter inbox message from some like Angels fan account, and it said, "Would you be interested in being a pitching coach for the Angels?" And I was like, "This is weird. This has got to be fake." I showed my wife. I was like, "This has got to be fake." And I had a phone number. It was like, "Hey, this is Michael Acosta. Just call me if you get this. I've been trying to get a hold of you." So I called him, and it turns out it was our farm director. Asked me if I'd be interested in coaching for the Angels, and went through the interview process and eventually got the job. It was kind of crazy. I always tell this story is that he said, "We'll set up an interview in a couple of weeks. I'll be in touch." And I never heard from him. It'd been 3 weeks, and I sent him a text and said, "Hey, just checking in to see if we're still going to do that interview." And he said, "Call me tomorrow at 2:00. And I just thought it was going to be a general catch up on the phone. And when I called in, there was about 10 people on the call. It was the farm director, the assistant GM, the big league pitching coach, the pitching coordinators, and kind of took me by surprise. But I had actually made some notes and put them in my car just in case the phone call came and I wasn't expecting it. A little cheat sheet to go off, and I think I did pretty well in the interview. So
I would think you did. It sounds like you did okay.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, it'd be like me calling, the Angels, and there's all the play-by-play guys, the general manager, the owner, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
That definitely got your attention. I'm sure they were serious, obviously.
Yeah. So that went well, and then I've been there ever since. This would have been my 3rd year. So.
Right. Yeah, it's been a crazy. You mentioned a little bit about the Burlington situation and the contraction. We won't go too deep into that, but I know that it's probably the back of all coaches' minds. I know it's in the back of all the players' minds. It's not been as in the forefront because of the major league situation, but there are some changes coming. I don't want to dive too much into that, but just your overall feeling about what the future holds for the MILB folks, just from a coaching standpoint, and what the players may have to be up against.
Yeah, it's been really weird. Like, we were 2 weeks into spring training and all the virus stuff kind of happened, and we got a random message to jump on a call, and it was the whole organization, and they were like, "Hey, we're just gonna go home tomorrow," and that's it. And then since then, we kept working March through around June. We were doing phone calls with players. We were talking to players. We were coaching. We were watching game footage. We were going through data with players, and we were actually doing a lot of stuff, probably more than we typically do during spring training or anything like that. So we're actually getting a lot accomplished. And then the whole organization got furloughed June 1st, or basically the whole organization. We haven't really heard a lot since then. So it's kind of been frustrating. I've talked to some coaches in some other organizations, and they're still getting paid, but nobody really knows what's going to happen next year, and our contracts are up at the end of October. So everybody's kind of concerned what's going to happen from October to spring training, because there's 4 or 5 months of, do they want to pay us for doing nothing? And so there's kind of a lot of unknown. There's a lot of unknown for next season as far as what the minor leagues is going to look like. I think they're eliminating some teams, eliminating some levels, and nobody really knows what it's going to look like. So it's a little frustrating at this point, but hopefully it becomes clear in the next couple months.
Well, I'll tell you, and I sympathize with you. It's the same way for us in Kansas City with the American Association. 6 teams not playing, and I've talked about this over and over again. This whole time, and no matter if you're it started off, nurses and doctors are on the front lines, but now this thing's affected everybody. Sports, there's not an industry it's not affected, and I totally get it, man. And I'll be definitely pulling for you, praying for you guys as well going forward. I mean, it is definitely, as I didn't even know what we're doing half the time in Kansas City. This is my theory that, Graham Lloyd, World Series guy. I mean, he made a sizable, nice living, a career as a bullpen piece. I mean, watching what Liam's doing. He's a bulldog out there now. This guy, I mean, he's emotional. He looks like a closer. He's pitching like a closer. He's working ahead, throwing strikes. I have a theory. The Australians make good pitchers. I don't know. I have no scientific evidence, but I'm going to ask you, and Paul and I talked about this in shows previous. The Australians make great pitchers. I don't know, is it the footy? I think the footy thing, because footy's a great game. It takes a lot of skill, a lot of different skills. Is it the cricket? What do you think that makes pitching so appealing to young Australians?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of everything. I mean, Australia is such a good sporting nation in general, and produces a bunch of good athletes. But I think cricket definitely has something to do with the ability to spin the baseball. For some reason, an Australian pitcher just have a feel for spinning the baseball. I think that comes from playing cricket your whole life, and just messing around with spinning the baseball in your hand and stuff like that. And I think the mentality of football, you watch Luke play, and he's a football player trapped in a baseball player's body. Like, he plays the game like he's playing in the AFL. And that's what got him to the big leagues, is his mentality and his ability to turn it on when the game starts. And you see Liam doing that now, and Balfour was a similar type guy. And I think for some reason the Australians have that mix of all those sports, and when they can put it all together into baseball, for some reason they make good pitchers. So I would agree with that theory.
You're watching Talking Baseball Australia, baseball's best mate. I'm Dan Vaughan. With me is a former Perth Heater and a Perth Heat pitching coach, Tyler Anderson, who's seen a lot of arms lately, a guy that you've seen up close this last year. I didn't get a chance to talk to Dylan Unsworth a lot. I was there late. I got a chance to watch him a lot and go about his business. Just how good of an arm is that guy? I kind of feel, and maybe, and I'm not a scout, but I've done this game long enough. I feel like somebody's going to be smart eventually, take a flyer on this guy, and they're going to cash in, because I think he's got something.
Yeah, he's the greatest kid I've ever been around. I had him at the Angels for a year, and just met him in spring training before he went to AAA. That was my first year with the Angels. And we kind of hit it off just because he's South African, I'm Australian, and we talk rugby and cricket and sports. And so we talked a lot then. And then when I got the job with the Heat, he was kind of supposed to be going to Venezuela, and then that got canceled, and it worked out perfect for him to come to Perth. And I mean, he had an unreal year, and he's a big leaguer. He could pitch in the big leagues right now, and he would not stand out. I think if all this virus stuff didn't happen, he probably would have got a chance in AAA somewhere, or AA, or chance to go to spring training at least and try to make a team. And unfortunately, all this stuff happened. But I think he should be pitching in Asia right now or somewhere. And he was supposed to go to Mexico. I think he got an actually pretty good deal to go to Mexico, and then that canceled. But yeah, he's a pro. He can pitch. He knows what to do. He can throw any pitch in any count. And yeah, you saw what he did in the ABL. And some of the other guys in the ABL have gone on to pitch in the big leagues, and he was the best guy all year, every single start. And the consistency, the work ethic, I mean, he wants it more than anything. And hopefully down the track he'll get a chance with a team, because I think he deserves to pitch a day in the big leagues.
You've got a heck of a resume. I don't think a lot of fans know this, and I don't know if it's because we just don't do a good enough job talking you up. But you've got a heck of a resume. Not as a player, as a coach. You were 10-2 at William Woods there in Fulton, Missouri. As a career, you had a great senior year. You coached at some very high levels. Dartmouth, which Ivy League school, but Division One. Of course, you mentioned St. Louis University on the Angels. At what point in your career did you say, I might want to go into coaching? Because it had to happen at some point. Was there a certain point that you said, because you seem like a real motivational guy too. Where was that point? Where was that point in your career?
Yeah, I think I kind of always knew I was never going to pitch in the big leagues. I was probably like 140 pounds my senior year at William Woods, and drew hard for a guy that was 140 pounds and could pitch a little bit, but I was never going to get a chance to play at that level just because of where I was at physically, and I was probably just a smaller guy in general. But I think I always knew I wanted to coach. For some reason, that's always interested me, even when I was a little kid. I always focus on some of the better coaches and stuff like that. So yeah, I think I kind of knew. And then when I moved back to the States, I actually was a project manager for an IT company working for my father-in-law. And I hated every minute of it. It was nice that he gave me a job, but I hated it. I was stuck in the office. I was doing something I wasn't passionate about. The money was fine, but I hated every single day of it. And I somehow worked out a way to continue to do that job and move to Dartmouth and work remotely. And that's kind of what funded me for the first couple of years, was working remotely as a project manager for IT company. And then eventually I was able to get out of that and do the coaching full time. So
this wasn't one of the questions I was going to ask, but I think I remember now. What was the connection with Perth and Dartmouth? There's a connection there. And where am I thinking there's a connection besides you? Where am I missing? I'm missing somebody. Is there a player who?
Nick Rupert.
Rupert, that's what it was.
Yeah.
All right, now I remember because he told
Nick
us on a broadcast. Yes, that's all right.
Me at Dartmouth, and then wanted to come out to Perth, and I sent him over to play for Perth Heat. He ended up. I sent him over to play for South Perth, actually.
That's right.
He ended up playing for the Heat, and then he's actually with the Cleveland Indians now.
Yes.
As a scout. So.
Yeah, I gave him a ride to the Sydney airport because he had to fly back and pitch for South Perth. We were in Sydney, and he was telling me the story. Now I remember this morning, a Sunday morning. I had to drive him to the airport when I was when we were in Sydney playing the Blue Sox, and I remember him telling me this all is coming back to me. I see it just sometimes these interviews just throw stuff out there and it sticks.
Yeah, he's the greatest kid. He's awesome.
He is a good guy. Tyler Anderson with us here on Talking Baseball Australia. Dan Vaughan with you, having a little chat here. All right, I just hired you as the new baseball honcho of the ABL, Australia, whatever you want to call it. You're the guy. You've got the crystal ball. You got all the bells and whistles, the strings. What do you want to do? How would you grow the game, and what would you recommend? How would you go about growing the game in Australia?
I think we're on the right track. Firstly, I think technology is going to play a big part in how we grow the game from here on. A lot of the guys that come to play in the ABL are looking for jobs other places. So having the ability to implement TrackMan, if we had TrackMan at every single stadium and we were able to give that information to players and to teams, it makes a lot of sense for players to come to the ABL to try to get jobs elsewhere when they can get all their information and we can pass it to them and say, here's what you did in the season, and here's my spin rate and velo and movement and all this stuff. And I think I was talking to Johnny Anderson about this, who spent time in the Atlantic League. They couldn't get their information, and it was private, and none of those guys could get it, and they wanted it to send to teams to try and get jobs, and that was holding them back. So I think that would be one of the main things is having TrackMan in every stadium. Sharing that information, making that information accessible to players will attract better players. I also think if you think about the Perth Heat and the Tampa Bay Rays, for them to have the ability to look at the game reports on TrackMan after every game, and I know they have a coach there, but the coach can only do so much on written reports and stuff like that. So the league is for development, and if we can show development through technology, that makes a ton of sense. So I think that's the number one thing. I think they did a good thing going back with the MLB agreement, and getting more prospects and younger players in that league is to grow the game.
All right, let's have one fun final question to wrap things up with Tyler here. I'm going somewhere with this, so kind of bear with me and see if you can follow me here. All right, you're going to take a franchise, and I mean franchise, a food franchise back to Australia, because a lot of these college kids come over, or these young kids come over, they find these American thing, and there's one I'm thinking in particular. But is there anything you'd take back and say, you know what, I'm going to open up one of these downtown, I don't know, right in the middle of the heart of Sydney or Perth or wherever?
Yeah.
Is there something you'd like to take back?
I'm a huge Chipotle fan, so Chipotle is the number one thing. And if we could do that and have baseball players come over, they would crush it. So
it's funny because there's a group of guys that Steve Fish had on Facebook a couple of years ago, and all they wanted to talk about was either buffalo wings or Raising Cane's chicken fingers.
Yeah.
And I get these messages from these guys going, "Hey, is there a Cane's in so and so in Iowa?" And I'm like, "No, but they're it's funny." But final thing for you too, before I let you go. I get asked this all the time in the American Association. You see my bio, he works in Australia and he's been going forever. And Australia baseball, do you get the same thing, or do you get what I get? I get from the non-baseball fan, they're kind of like, baseball in Australia, but from guys who know the game, man, tell me more about playing over there. I want to come play. Do you get that same kind of strange response?
Yeah, for people that don't know baseball here, it's always weird, like, oh, you play baseball in Australia, and we didn't even know they played there or whatever. But the baseball people are starting to learn that, hey, it's pretty good baseball. And the Australian guys are good, and everybody knows Hendricks now, and some of the other guys that were in the league, Moylan and some of those other guys that have some big personalities, have helped grow the game for sure. Now more than ever, I've had agents and people reaching out to me to get their players because of the whole virus deal. There's so many guys that want to play right now. I'm hoping the ABL can have imports, but we'll see. But I think the league could be better than ever if they can have imports this year.
Tyler Anderson, appreciate your time, my friend. Always good to see you, and look forward to having you on the show again down the road. We could have gone on. I mean, I've got a guys, I do apologize. Let's try it again. Let's see if this will work for you guys. Nope, that's not going to work. There we go. Is the audio working now? I'm going to lose my mind. This has been the show, the most disastrous. I apologize. and I apologize to my partner Paul as well, because you guys deserve better. And this is all on me. I don't know what happened here. I've been up more than I can chew tonight. I don't know what's going on, but I do apologize. It's all on me, and you guys deserve a better product than this, and I do apologize. This is what I do for a living, and to not do it properly is really upsetting. But anyway, what I was going to say was thanking Tyler first off, and then number two, it's really good insight. And I was thinking more along the footy path, being and in the cricket thing too, but I was just thinking more just the cricket and baseball are distant cousins. That I figured that was the easy connection, but the spin of the cricketer, that's what really helps. And I think, and if you look at the kind of pitchers that we've seen develop from Australia who make the big leagues, they're not necessarily big strikeout guys. They're contact guys. They want you to put the ball in play. I've had conversation after conversation with Warwick Saupold over the years about letting his defense do the work for him, letting the ball move on the batter, let the ground take care of all the trouble, not try to blow it by everybody. Strikeouts are great, but doesn't always have to be the case. As we're here on Talking Baseball Australia Live again. Sorry, the gremlins have been crazy today. Lots of gremlins today. Let me bring this off the screen too as we close up. Questions, comments for you guys as we round this thing up here on your Monday morning. Paul had to jump off right a few moments ago. He had a busy day ahead as well. Some news and notes around the association. A couple things. First off, congratulations to the West own Liam Hendricks. He was named the American League reliever of July and August. That's how good of a year he's had. It's been a strange week for Oakland. Now, you go back to a week ago, Wednesday in the States, they were in Texas playing the Rangers in Arlington, and there was the social unrest that happened throughout. And of course, you may have seen the NBA, National Basketball Association, stepped away for a couple of days. Some of the hockey was stopped for a couple of days. Most of the baseball stopped as well. One of those games being the Rangers and Athletics. They didn't play one of those games on a Thursday, and the Athletics went on to Houston for their next stop on the road trip. They were also sat that game out. Then the Astros both sat out. So they go into Saturday, play a doubleheader to make up for the Friday game, and they play the regular scheduled Saturday game. They drop both ends of the Athletics. Then they get a COVID outbreak. They don't play the series finale on that Sunday there in Houston, and then they go to play the Seattle series. That whole series so far has been banged, and they've not played all week. So Liam hasn't actually pitched since last week. He's still sitting on the numbers for the season, and just looking at those numbers, they've not changed since last week. 2-0 for the year, 16 ball games, 10 saves in the 11 opportunities. Only had the one blown save in 16 in the third innings, 23 strikeouts. Those numbers were good enough for the American League pitcher of a relief pitcher. I think I can say pitcher, relief pitcher of the month of July and August. So they're kind of bringing them down here a little bit. And usually it's 1 month, but because the season started in middle of July, they pared it down to a month and a half, and he's had a heck of a year. Definitely, if there was an all-star selection, he would be in that mix for sure. And potentially, depending on what happens going forward, could be in the Cy Young mix as well, which is also a possibility. I'd be remiss, too, if I didn't mention the passing of Tom Seaver. Of course, the legendary Tom Seaver passed away here in the States yesterday at 73. Very bad, sad news, but thoughts and prayers for his family and all the baseball family as well, losing Tom Seaver, who passed away over here. That's another sort of it's a headline because this guy's a Hall of Famer. So you know, tough times. It's like 2020 just gets dogpiled on, isn't it? It's just one of those crazy deals. One more note too: Lewis Thorpe was optioned late last week back to the Twins minor league or their alternate site. It's the training site, and all that means is he's still the 40-man, still part of the Twins big league roster, but he was optioned back. He has options left. He's got I believe this year plus 2 more. So he's got option years. All that means is, and when they say options, when they say he's out of options, that means they got to take him off the roster. But because he can go back and forth as many times. He's already been twice now. He's already been off the alternate squad once and back on and then off again. So this is just an option. He well, presumably you figure when the rosters expand and later on this month, he will probably be back in the mix, you would think, as a bullpen piece for the Minnesota Twins. The lefty Lewis Thorpe was optioned for the year at 6.14 in 6 ball games, and he'll be there with the taxi squad, they're calling it. They're at the alternate site. Other news and notes to pass along to you for the ABL. This is kind of the ABL segment number 2. Auckland making big news as well, and as far as what they've done, they've been really aggressive, and what I love to see too is that so many teams are being aggressive signing players. In Auckland, no doubt, doing that. The 3 Kiwis returning to Auckland, the Tuatara for the 2021 season. Of course, inaugural Tuatara players, Max Brown, the outfield, Tiwara Bishop, the catcher, and Chris Richards, kind of a little do-it-all kind of guy, utility guy, all agreed to new deals for the 2021 season, which should be, the way this whole bubble thing shapes up, that should be a really exciting brand of baseball. A lot of excitement going on the island coming up during the winter. Also, he joins fellow Kiwi Andrew Mark and Elliot Johnstone, who both were inked a couple of weeks ago, and also Korean slugger Kim Wong-sok, part of their 2020 Tournament roster. Tuatara making that news. And again, it's exciting for our game to see great things happening over in Auckland. That's a franchise that 2 years ago didn't exist. Well, it existed in a logo and a name, but to see the great game of baseball really catch fire in Auckland and in New Zealand, and I think a future looks bright for having maybe another team there in New Zealand at some point. Quick chance for you guys to get your questions and comments in as well. We're around third head for home here on Talking Baseball Australia Live. My name is Dan Vaughan. My broadcast partner, Paul Morgan, stepped away here a few minutes ago. A couple of other notes as well. Last week was the trading deadline in the big leagues, or actually this last week was on Tuesday. A couple of imports, former ABLers on the move, former Canberra infielder Gabriel Arias. He was part of San Diego's number 7 prospect, was sent to Cleveland. Of course, you saw where San Diego was in about every move. The only person that wasn't traded or acquired was maybe the broadcasters. They didn't do that, but everybody else. The joke on Twitter this week was I didn't get traded to San Diego or from San Diego. That's kind of the joke on Twitter for a lot of folks. But he was in that Mike Clevenger deal with the Indians and the Padres. Also, Anthony Alford in Canberra, 14-15 class for those Canberras. He was also in the move this week, moved from Pittsburgh to Toronto in a secondary move. A lot of those secondary moves for cash and things of that nature. And also former Heater Michael Gibbons, who we need to try to track him down in the offseason and do some kind of conversation with him. This is a great story. Here's a guy that not only is he a former Heater and a former ABLer, but he's also a guy that changed positions. He made the big leagues, of course, as a pitcher, but began his career as a infielder with the Heat and transitioned. And when a guy transitions like that, goes from position A, fielding position, to a pitcher and makes the big leagues, that's a pretty big deal. That's a pretty interesting story. And also this former note, you also heard that this was coming from Tyler Anderson mentioned this. John Anderson had a big week for Fargo. He's 2-2 this year, 2.92, 4 innings with the Fargo Moorhead Redhawks. They won at 1.9 games in a row in the American Association, and he had an 8 strikeout performance last time out for Fargo, part of an 8-game winning streak when they went to 9 2 nights ago. They did drop off last night, but Fargo Moorhead, the Redhawks there, and that team also has a Coral Prime, former Perth Heater, is also in that lineup card to time in there with his former teammates there, and current teammate there in the Fargo Moorhead and part of the Heat family. All right, last call for questions and comments. Want to get those from you here on Talking Baseball Australia. I'll stay around here just a moment. Good to see Tyler checking in, and again, appreciate Tyler joining us on the show. Really great stuff. And I meant this, and I mean this. We could talk to him especially pitching guys. I could talk to pitching guys for hours, and he's one of those guys you know he knows what he's talking about. If you follow him on social media, Tyler's a passionate guy. He loves the role of coaching. He's pitching coaches have got to be a little bit of not just a mechanics guy, but also between the ears kind of guy. Hitting's a science too. Pitching's a science, but I think pitching really is sometimes in here. It's convincing a guy to throw strikes, believe in his stuff, and you've got to be a little bit of a mentor, mechanics guy, a mental coach, all those things. And Tyler fits all those roles, and I think it's really good to have not only a guy from the West and a guy from Australia, but in the States at the big league level in an organization. He's coaching in the Angels organization. That's huge. We talked about Michael Collins over the course of the last couple of years, being a bullpen catcher, how those things, of course, Michael, the former Canberra manager, how big that is for our game to get that exposure. And the more young Australian mentors we can get, the more knowledge they can get, it's only going to help our national teams and our growth of the clubs and going forward. So very good. And I hope you saw and heard that from Tyler as well. Coming up on next week's show, next week's best mate, your baseball's best mate. We're reaching out. I'm not going to tell you for sure, but I think we're going to dive in more to the story of Manny being Manny. We're going to try to track down Adam Dottie, who's agreed to come on the show. We haven't confirmed him yet, the CEO and the owner of the Sydney Blue Sox, but he has agreed to come on. I haven't actually officially got the word back, but Adam, hope will come on live with us next week and join us and talk about the good things going on in Sydney. And we'll be reaching out in weeks to come. We've got a long list of guests coming on. We're going to keep growing this thing weekly with this live video, and hopefully we'll get the gremlins worked out. We'll pay the internet bill or something, because whatever happened tonight, I don't know what happened. But anyway, appreciate you guys joining us and here on Talking Baseball Australia, baseball's best mate. Big thanks to my broadcast partner, Paul Morgan, who joined me in the first part. Again, he had a busy day today. It was a busy day at school. The kids had Dad's Day at school. He had to get up there as well and spend some time with the family, and wishing him and the family the best and all that going forward this weekend. To you guys worldwide, it's a crazy time we're in, right? It's a crazy, crazy time, but give you guys virtual hugs, okay? And lots of love. Let's show some empathy. I keep saying this to our folks in Kansas City, to anybody that listen to me. Let's all be better tomorrow than we were today. Let's all try to fight through this thing and be better people, better fans, family, whatever you want to call yourself today. Let's be better at it tomorrow. Also, one more note to pass along to you. Talking Baseball Australia's website, it's in its beta testing mode right now, let's say, and it's ready to launch. We're going to have all kinds of this content and other. Paul's going to be putting a blog on there. We'll be having our Call the Pins, which, by the way, this weekend you're going to see the Call the Pin on Saturday morning. We'll break down some of the best parts of this show, at least the non-gremlin parts, most of Tyler's parts, because those are great. It was your pilot that had the problems. You won't see a lot of the pilot. You'll see a lot of Tyler and me together, because he did save the show. But I do appreciate it. Again, thank you guys for watching. Thank you for listening. Please share this. Please follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Talking Baseball Australia on Twitter. And then, of course, it's actually TB Australia on Twitter. Or, of course, our Facebook page you're watching right now, Talking Baseball Australia. And also, if you want to go find the archives on Baseball's Best Mate, go to the Sporting Star Network, and you'll see these shows and others there as well. And we're working on the website. That'll be up for you hopefully it's up, but the beta will be up and rolling next Friday for you guys. You will see all that as well. Paul Morgs, it's Paul Morgs on Twitter, and Dan Vaughan Jr. on Twitter as well. We got all those channels for you. We got it all covered. As we're baseball's best mate, we believe in the great game of Australia and the growth of our game in Australia in the future, looking very, very good. Have a great rest of your Friday in Australia. In your North America, a great rest of your Thursday night. And let's be great and be better next time when we meet each other next week. Same time, same place, right here. We will be on time next week. 8 a.m. in the West, 7 p.m. in the evening in North America in the Central Time Zone. That'll be all next week on Baseball's Best Mate, Talking Baseball Australia. The part I hate the most is to shut this thing down. I hate it. We'll shut it down for another week. And for Paul Morgan and myself, Dan Vaughan, wish you a final time. Hey, have a great rest of your day. We'll see you next time on Talking Baseball Australia Live, Baseball's Best Mate.
said Cracker Jacks.